look on his face. If Mark Dacascos played Superman back in his day, he would shoot laser beams that will melt not only your face, or he would just melt your whole damn body. This is the
Welcome to the Video Store Geek Podcast, where your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentine talks about films made and released during the golden age of the VHS era.
It's time to sharpen those blades and enter the arena of death in Istanbul as the debut episode of the Video Store Geek Podcast presents American Samurai, released in 1993, starring David Bradley and Mark Dacascos. This is the story of an LA journalist who was raised in Japan as a samurai warrior, who was kidnapped and forced into a series of death matches, ultimately culminating in a match between him and his one-time stepbrother, played by the one and only Mark Dacascos. So we're going to get right into it. And for those of you who wonder what this podcast is, well, this used to be the World Film Geek Podcast, and I decided instead of that and the video throwback cinema reviews, decided to make a brand new podcast that will just focus on the golden age of the VHS era. So we're talking about classic films, genre, B-movies, all genres, and all that good stuff. So what better way to do a debut episode than talk about this underrated Sam Firstenberg masterpiece. So let's get right into it and talk about American Samurai. The story begins in Japan, where a couple is killed in a plane crash with their baby, the only survivor, raised by Tatsuya Sanga, a Japanese master of the samurai way of Bushido. The young baby, who's known as Drew Collins, becomes his second son alongside Kenjiro, his natural birth son. Together, the two boys begin training in the art of samurai. And there's a sense of distinction between the two because Drew is American and Kenjiro is Japanese, and Kenjiro feels like Drew is not a part of the family, but yet Tatsuya sees Drew as a member of the family now that he has raised him since being a baby. This ultimately leads to Drew becoming quite the samurai himself and inheriting the family heirloom, the Sanga katana sword, which pisses off Kenjiro. And when Kenjiro discovers this, he realizes that Drew could be the better son. Kenjiro decides to join the Yakuza and is pretty much disowned by his father. And this leads to a massive rift between the two brothers. Flash forward about a year or two later, Drew is now a journalist in Los Angeles, and he's doing a story on the opium smuggling ring in Istanbul. To join him on this trip is Janet, a photojournalist who at first he feels uncomfortable going on this adventure with because of, you probably hear the stereotypical stuff. Women can get kidnapped, forced into slavery, that hoo-ha stuff. But eventually, Janet and Drew do get closer and they have a relationship. But unfortunately, Drew gets beaten up by a band of thugs. He is shot in the torso and his sword is stolen. Well, Drew, thanks to his mastery in the martial arts, is able to take the bullet out of his own torso. And he and Janet head to Istanbul, where it's soon discovered that it's been the smugglers, I should say, are not just involved in the drug trade, but they're also involved in an illegal fighting arena whose champion just happens to be Kenjiro. So Janet gets kidnapped, and this forces Drew to have to enter a series of matches, not only to get Janet back, but ultimately he has to face their champion, who turns out to be Kenjiro. And of course, this leads to a more massive rift between the two. And as Kenjiro, now fully immersed into the Yakuza way, he feels like, Drew is worthless, and he does not see him as worthy of having the sword where he does. So Drew finds himself befriending some of the other fighters, and there's a bunch of fighters in this film, and you see a lot of these arena fights full of weapons, various styles of weapons, kung fu. Drew befriends an American named Harrison, who has used a big knife for a weapon. There's an Australian named McKinney who uses the Quan Dao as a weapon. And you have these other guys like Fong Shu, who uses not only two swords, but he also has a hair whip with a blade at the end. And yeah, so that's what it is. It's a series of, it's like a tournament film basically, just under the disguise of a revenge film between two brothers. So that's what pretty much the film's about. But it's a pretty damn good film. It's a lot of some great action in this film. Sometimes short, sometimes but we get to see David Bradley once again show off his skills in the film. Of course, with American Samurai, you gotta understand that these two brothers could not be any more different. I like the fact that they have different personalities and even different looks. I mean, if you look at David Bradley, he's more calm and collected, even when he's in the face of danger, and he does confront the bad guys, the guys that were in charge of this arena, he still brings this cool collectiveness to him. Where Mark Dacascos, I mean, I've seen him play bad guys before, but I gotta say, there was no role where he brings a sense of ruthlessness than this film as Kenjiro. He's got this, the minute you see him on screen calling Drew a gaijin and just like having opposed to his father giving Drew the sword, the look on his face, if Mark Dacascos played Superman back in his day, he would shoot laser beams that will melt not only your face, or he would just melt your whole damn body. This is the stone cold type of face that he brings to his role as Kenjiro. I mean, when you see him in combat in the arena facing some of these other fighters, as soon as he's ready for the killing blow, he just unleashes this stone-faced look with his eyes wide open, where I swear to God, if he was looking right at me, my face would be melting like the Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark, because it was that kind of look. That's how insane Mark Dacascos is in this movie. He is, and I'm not saying it in a bad way. I mean, I'm just saying that he is so ruthless as Kenjiro. Like, he will do anything to prove like his brother is dishonorable of the family name, yet he's a member of the freaking Yakuza. So I see where this is coming from. And then what's really interesting is the whole romantic angle between Janet and Drew. It goes pretty quick. It doesn't take its time. They start out like kind of loathing each other, but then within like 5 minutes of the movie, they're already in bed together. What does that tell you? I mean, it's pretty weird how they rushed through that little angle of the film. But I gotta say though, like I said, one of the best things about this film is the action, and kudos has to go out to the cast of fighters in this film. There are some pretty good fighters in this film. So we have, of course, David Bradley, who's a martial artist. He's the guy who took over for Michael Dudikoff in the American Ninja series. Mark Dacascos, I can't say enough about him. I mean, if I can just do a whole, if I could do a whole damn episode on Mark Dacascos' like some of his best movies if I had to, and so enough said about him. But there's some other good fighters in this film. I'm going to name some right now that are in the film that definitely you need to check out. One is Australian Dutchman Ron Vrieken. He was actually one of Richard Norton's best buddies. And here he plays McKinney, an Australian guy. The guy kind of looks like John Travolta on steroids. And I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm not saying Ron Vrieken did steroids, but Ron Vrieken is this muscle built to him. But his face, if you look at him, he kind of looks like John Travolta, just with blonde hair. And he's been in quite a few films with his buddy, the late Richard Norton, throughout the 90s. So, that's where, but here he plays McKinney, an Australian fighter in the arena. Then you have the American cowboy, Harrison, played by Rex Ryan, who did a really good job in this one. He befriends Drew. And, he kind of has, he mocks McKinney at first, but then he's like, he does apologize to him because I'm just trying to ease the tension because I don't know how this is working. So, there's that whole thing between the two of them. They have a mutual respect for each other. Then there's also, this is amazing. We have two Hong Kong movie. One is Dion Lam, who actually has not one but two roles in the film. And I'm just going to do a little spoiler here. He does get killed in both scenes. He has two fights in this film. The first one, he plays as Lee, and he faces off against Mark Dacascos' Kenjiro in like the first round of the fights. Later, you get to see him again sporting a different look as Sing Yi. who's a kung fu expert, and he takes on Fang Shu. Fang Shu is played by Anthony Cito. If you don't know who this guy is right now, Anthony Cito, he's an Australian Chinese wushu expert who actually did a great 2008 film that I highly recommend. It's a drama called Wushu. It stars Sammo Hung as a wushu coach, and it's about the story of him and his disciples going through the life struggles and other things, and all in with the tournament coming up. And it's a great film. Cito directed the film, and I believe he also choreographed the action for this film. And his wife is very famous too. You might know her, a woman by the name of Juju Chan. She you've probably seen her in stuff like Wu Assassins, and a few other Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, a few Hong Kong flicks. Recently, she was in Lights Out. She's a Taekwondo champion. She's Anthony Cito's wife. But we get to see a young Anthony Cito here as Fang Shu. This is the guy I told you about who has the hair whip tail with the blade at the end. And yeah, it's amazing that we get to see these two Hong Kong legends in this film, especially Dion Lam, who went on to become the stunt coordinator for the Awesome Infernal Affairs trilogy, having a small role. And he also, I don't know if for those of you who might not know, I know the video game Doom had a very abysmal adaptation, which had Dwayne Johnson and Carl Urban. But the one thing I did like about Doom, not only was the first person shooter that comes in the third act, but I actually liked the fight scene between Dwayne Johnson and Carl Urban towards the end of the film. And Dion Lam was the guy who choreographed that fight. And I believe Dion Lam also choreographed Exit Wounds, which should have been Steven Seagal's comeback. And I think it was like very briefly. And then once again, Seagal slumped until he got ready for Attrition a couple of years back, about maybe 6 years ago. And I think Attrition's like the last good film that he did. If you haven't seen that one yet, there's a lot of Hong Kong action in that one. But yeah, so we got that. But yeah, the fight scenes are pretty good in this film. Some of them are short, really short, short and sweet. You get to see Bradley with his martial arts kicks, but then when you see him in samurai form, you can tell he's done his homework. I mean, some of the fights some of the stances he does look like you're watching a Kurosawa film, like Seven Samurai. It's really, really groundbreaking. But yeah, so the film was released on March 3rd, 1993 in the United States. And just recently, Sam Firstenberg actually did a director's cut of the film. And I think part of the reason is because the film was made when Canon founders Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus had split. Menachem Golan left in 1990 and formed 21st Century. And their films were known for like The Forbidden Dance, and he did Captain America with Matt Salinger. Now, Yoram Globus, he formed another subsidiary company called Global Pictures. And that was one of his companies. And Global Pictures was the one who made this film, American Samurai. And Sam Firstenberg, enough can't say about him. He's the guy who did American Ninja 1 and 2 before Cedric Sundstrom, South African actor, took over for 3 and 4, I believe. But to see Firstenberg return to the American warrior genre, because American Ninja was originally called American Warrior before they retitled it American Ninja to capitalize on the whole ninja genre of the 80s. But to see that, yeah, it was a pretty good film. I enjoyed American Samurai. And the director's cut has some more, I say, dramatic stuff going on in the film. He wanted to emphasize on the whole aspect of Bushido, I believe. Some of the fights are more graphic in the director's cut. It's a little bit more graphic. And it's kind of like what they did with Shoot Fighter back in the 90s. If you haven't seen Shoot Fighter, there's a theatrical cut, and then there's an unrated cut that's more graphically violent. I think Firstenberg was going along with that with some of the fights in American Samurai. But overall, it was a pretty good film. I enjoyed American Samurai. It's definitely a 90s B-movie gem that you should check out. And I believe you can see the director's cut now. I believe he actually uploaded it on YouTube. So if you do come across it, definitely check out the director's cut of American Samurai. It was really good. Of course, what would happen later, this was right before Mark Dacascos' breakout came in Only the Strong, where he played Louis Stevens, the capoeira expert turned mentor. And this came like the same year. So this was like the year of the Costco's. This is where we got to see him break out. First American Samurai, and then Only the Strong. David Bradley would go on to do American Ninja 5. Well, it was originally called American Dragons, but then to capitalize on the whole ninja crap, they retitled it American Ninja 5. And by then, the series was done for at that point. And he would go on to get, he would move from Canon to New Image, working on a series of films such as Cyborg Cop and others before retiring from the industry. And according to Sam Firstenberg, he believes, and no one knows what really happened to David Bradley. His real name is actually Brad Simpson, and it's believed that he's focused on music these days. So, did an interview with Viking Samurai. You should definitely check that interview out. But he believes that David Bradley went back to doing his other passion of music these days. So that's what he could be doing. Who knows? Dacascos' career cannot be said about him. I mean, this guy is probably one of the most recognizable faces in action cinema today. Look at his impressive resume. Drive, The Base, Sanctuary, John Wick Chapter 3. He was the main villain, Zero. The Driver, One Night in Bangkok. He's still going today. He's loves it. He's a guy who loves doing Showdown in Manila. He's definitely up there today. He's still one of the greatest, who just loves to do the work. And so I can't say enough about Dacascos, man. He's just still going with it today, and I'm really glad. But as for American Samurai, I would highly recommend this one if you love 90s B movie action like I do. I would give this one a solid B+. So you heard it here. I'm giving American Samurai a B+. Yeah, there's some flaws here and there, and of course there's some cheesy acting on some of the supporting actors. But I gotta say, some of the action might be short, but it's also very sweet. And there's some really good fight scenes in this movie that should definitely be checked out. And this comes, of course, on the wave of like the 90s tournament trend, the 80s and 90s tournament trend. So, if you're into stuff like that, this is definitely one you should check out. But yeah, that's it for this is it for the debut episode of the Video Store Geek Podcast. Hope you all had a great listen. And we're gonna do this again soon. I'm trying to think of my next film. I think we might be doing this in 2 weeks. Actually, I have a film from the 70s I really want to talk about, and I just recently watched it for the first time, and I think it'll be good. And the movie is, I'll just tell you right now, it's a comedy called Watch Out, We're Mad, and stars Terrence Hill and Bud Spencer. So I will be actually doing airing that episode in 2 weeks. And so I hope you all get to listen to that episode as well. And thank you for checking out this debut episode of the Video Store Geek Podcast. I'm hoping down the road we're going to have some guests, depending on the movie I'm talking about. We're going to have some fans of the film talk about their love of the films as well, joining me on this. So we'll see how things go. This is the start. And thank you again for listening. We'll see you we'll be back in 2 weeks with Watch Out, We're Mad. And until then, as always, fellow film geeks, stay awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Video Store Geek Podcast. Don't forget to check out worldfilmgeek.com for the latest reviews, interviews, and news in the world of indie and global cinema. And see you on the next episode of the podcast. Stay awesome, film geeks.